Hello! Welcome to the next set I'm reviewing in the EX era. And now, we're moving on to EX Dragon. In the last video, I found myself in the Great Dunes of the Desert, and I think that I'll be trying to escape, while also letting you guys know a little bit about the set. Firstly, I'll talk about how large the set is, and the release date. So, EX Dragon was released in 2003, on November 24th. It features a total of 100 cards, 97 normal cards, and 3 secret rare cards. That's right, they brought back secret rares, along with the EX cards that we're already reviewing, making this set filled with a bunch of different things. And after going through all the artists, you can tell that they went all out for Dragon, as they brought back a lot of previous artists, even ones that we haven't seen since Aquapolis. Really awesome to see them bringing back older artists and reinventing the wheel. But enough preamble, let's just talk about Dragon. Firstly, for trainer cards, we'll say that Keiji Kinabuchi reprinted the Balloonberry, and oh, there's a new artist, Zuka, which is a very unique name, but they illustrated the energy recycle system, which shows energies being transported through tubes into water. Then, we'll talk about Ken Ikuji, who illustrated the high pressure system stadium card, which shows a beach resort with a little stadium in the middle. A returning artist is Shinichi Yoshikawa, who illustrated the low pressure system, which showcases a storm and lightning as a dark stadium sits in the middle. The buffer piece was illustrated by Katsura Tabata and shows a piece attached to a rock as it glows pink. Finally, for trainers, we'll talk about Ken Sugimori, who worked on Mr. Briny's Compassion, which shows Mr. Briny on his little boat as he looks at the Wingle that runs around his house in the video games Ruby and Sapphire, and the TV reporter, which showed the reporters recording with the camera, and the reporter's microphone is almost exactly in the middle of the card, which is pretty neat. Interestingly, for Dragon, there aren't actually that many trainer cards for the set, so it wasn't a lot to cover, but it was the perfect time for me to actually get this. Whoa, where the heck am I? This looks like some kind of den of some sort. And it seems like I'm the only one in here, but I feel like it's some kind of weird presence is around. Well, let's just talk about our first actual Pokemon card. And this one was done by Hironobu Yoshida. Yes, Hironobu Yoshida, whose name we haven't said since Aquapolis, which was quite a few sets ago at this point. And they worked on two cards for Dragon, being the Mudkip, which sprays water out of its mouth, and the Torchic, which blows fire as it sits in a cave. These cards are nice renditions of the starters, and it's nice to see Yoshida back. Our next artist is Tomokazu Kamiya, who worked on three cards for Dragon, being the Magnemite, which sits on the floor looking up as it's surrounded by others, the Barboach, which sits on a rock as its whiskers fly around, and nice detailed water sits behind it, and the Wishcash, which splashes around the water, looking very sad, but there's also a thunderstorm in the background, which looks awesome. Komiya never fails to make interesting and awesome cards, that's for sure. Sumiyoshi Kizuki is an artist who hasn't been featured since Skyridge, and worked on the Snowrunt, which sits alone in a cave, as the moon can be seen in the background. This artwork combines their outlineless style with the heavy outline style that they use for some of their cards, which looks awesome when they combine them together. Our next artist is Ken Sugimori, who worked on a few Pokemon, and out of the ones that he did, I like the Corphish, which stands in a very realistic field with water in the back, and the Ninkata, which stands around in an eerie forest. However, Sugimori worked on a few other cards for the set, so you can always check those out on Cerebi.net. The next artist we're talking about is Yukimori, working on four cards for Dragon. Firstly, the Trapinch, which cutely sits down looking forwards, the Numel, who walks around the nice mossy grass in the background, the Grimer, which looks straight on at the camera as it looks very goopy, and the Shelgon, which closes its eyes and stands in a little forest. These cards by Mori are little and cute, so I enjoy them. Our next artist is another one returning from Skyridge, being Toshino Aoki, and firstly, they did the Nikata, which looks up as the sky and clouds part around it, and the Ninjask, which flies around, with the sky looking similar to the last card, but it just flies around looking forwards. Unfortunately, Aoki didn't receive many cards for Dragon, but I am happy to see them return. Next, we'll talk about Kyoku Umamoto, who worked on four cards for Dragon, starting with the Talo, which can be seen flying around with some dead trees below it, and mountains in the background. The Slugma, which looks back at the camera as wispy smoke clouds can be seen in the background with a mountain city. The Magnemite, which is flying around some kind of power plant. And the Magneton can be seen doing the same thing, in a different area. This simplistic style that they use in the set reminds me of the style that Toshino Aoki has, but that's a good thing. Another returning artist is Miki Tanaka, who worked on three cards for Dragon. Firstly, the Spoink, which can be seen bouncing around in broad daylight, with textured dirt and trees in the background. The Mareep, which can be seen looking up as it sparks electricity all around it. And then the Flaffy, which stands around in some tall grass, also shooting out sparks of electricity. All of Tanaka's cards in Dragon are cute and simplistic, but I do enjoy their style every time I see them more and more. It's nice to see an artist grow over time. Our next artist is Koki Saito, and their first card in the set is the Magikarp, which bounds around as floating waterfalls go in all different directions, which looks very dynamic and nice. The Bagon, which looks around in a cave with a circular crater-like formations in the ground. The Meditite, which looks at the camera with its mouth wide open and the fog surrounding it. The Gyarados, which opens its mouth as the water rages around it. And finally, the Salamence, which breathes out some draconic energy as it stances on top of a rock, and its neck swings to the left. These cards by Saito are quite nice, and they even got to do some bigger Pokemon like Gyarados and Salamence. And now, we'll talk about a titan when it comes to this age of Pokemon cards, being Hajime Kusajima, who worked on the Trico, which hangs onto a viney tree, looking around with lush trees in the background. The Pineco, which looks at the camera as it floats around. Ninkanda, which burrows to the ground and exits through an opening. The Houndour, which prance around with a pack of other Houndour. The Vibrava, which stands atop a rock with lines flowing off of it. The Seadra, which almost reminds me of a fusion of Tomokazu and Kusube's artwork, but it looks up towards the light. The Horsey, which reaches above the water and looks to the left, with a gradient of yellow to blue from the top to bottom. The Ninjask, which has its hands off of a tree, looking downwards. And finally, the Flygon, which creates waves around it as its body bends. Kusajima's artwork is really awesome to look at, because they've developed so many unique cards and awesome styles over the year. Now, we can talk about Ai Kusube, who worked on cards for Dragon, and there were only 3 of them, being the Shuppet, which takes up the whole card with its tongue out, the Dratini, which has steamy clouds surrounding it as it looks to the right, and the Dragonair, which floats to the sky, reaching a hole in some clouds as it looks to the left, and the smoke is a nice deep red. These cards are all very colorful, and have that distinctive Kusube style. Oh man, this den is so boring. There's nothing even happening here. Whoa. This floor doesn't seem very stable. What the heck? I don't want something stupid like this to happen. Now where the heck am I? This place looks volcanic, and I don't want to be here for too long. Is anyone here? Ugh. Anyways, I'm a little disoriented after that, but I think we should just move on to Kagemaru Himeno, as I'm gonna keep going, but I swear I just heard something in the cave. Anyways, firstly, the Corfish, which wades through the water as it walks through it, the Vibrava, which extends its wings to show the camera its whole body, as a deep yellow-orange sky sits in the back, the Crawdont, which raises its claw up, splashing water everywhere, and looking mildly upset, the Torkoal Hollow, which looks to the left as steam billows out of its mouth, and steam and mist can be seen everywhere, the Shedinja, which floats through the sky, with grass and wavy sky in the background. Naoya Kimura only worked on 3 cards for Dragon, and firstly, we'll talk about the Numel, which prances around some rocks and looks to the left, at night. The Camerupt, which looks straight at the camera as lava erupts from its back, and the Absol Hollow, which, again, looks at the camera, but has dead trees in the background, and the moon can be seen perfectly in the clearing of the trees behind its head, which looks gorgeous. Happy to see Kimura's name on the set. Our next artist is Atsuko Nishida, working on a bunch of cards for Dragon, the Swablu, which flies around the sky, the Marshtomp, which swims underwater, the Houndoom, which prances along with the blood-red sky, the Grovyle, which sits down on a branch, the Combuskin, which looks at the camera with foliage all around it, the Roselia Hollow, which walks around with its arms out and eyes closed, the Plusle, which looks up with its mouth up, and the Minun, which also looks up with its mouth open, looking happy, and I'm pretty sure that these two connect to each other. The Altaria flies through the sky and looking down. These Nishida artworks are amazing, and it's cool to see that they received so many holo cards in the set. Our next artist is Hisao Nakamura, who worked on the Geodude, which rests its arms on the back of its head, which is cute. The Corfish, which shoots out bubbles that show little mini images of Corfish. The Graveler, which bounds forwards with one arm extended outwards. The Skarmory, which looks up to the moon with a nice background. The Golem, which dances up with many rock faces in the background. And finally, the Crawdont, which raises up its arm with water splashing around it. Next, we'll talk about Midori Harada. And firstly, they have the Wurmple, which walks around the forest, the Spoink, which looks at the camera as others bounce around, the Magnemite, which flies around a big bridge, the Horsey, which looks back at the camera, the Geodude, which extends its arms out, which is very dynamic, a Seadra, which spews out water out of its mouth, the Graveler, which holds up some massive boulder as it looks forwards, the Magneton, which comes out of some kind of box, the Girafarig, which sniffs around, prances around, the Grumpig, which looks back at the camera as its tail flips around, which is pretty nice. Harada's artwork is always fantastic, and I'm excited to see more of them in the future. One of our final artists in the set is Mitsuhiro Rita,
who illustrated around 6 cards for the set, and starting with the Swallow, which flies downwards and splits the sky open, the Fortress, which sits in the darkness near some trees, and a little bit of light can be seen in the background, the Bagon, which jumps down with the sky in the background, and its eyes closed, the Shelgon, which is a waterfall that flows right through it and looks forwards. Salamence, which is a top-down view of the Pokemon, looking very cool, and then the Flygon, which flies through the sky and looks to the left, looking very happy. Now, we can talk about the EX cards in EX Dragon, and firstly, we'll talk about the Ampharos EX by Ryo Ueda. The card is really gorgeous. It's nice to see Ampharos get us some spotlight, and I love how its tail illuminates the area around it, which looks quite nice. The next one is the Dragonite EX, which is also really awesome. It's a view from below it, and it looks to the distance, with an awesome white and black background, which looks awesome. The next one by Ueda is Latios EX, which flies through the sky with some lines around it. Latios EX is also about the same idea, but it still looks really nice, just a different angle. But I really like how the card actually looks. Hikaru Koike did some EX cards as well. Firstly, the Golem, which has its arms up and looks at the camera with a purple background. The Kingdra EX, which looks upwards, and dots and white splashes fly outwards, which is really awesome looking. The Magcargo EX, which looks to the right, as red light reflects off of it, which looks pretty awesome. The Monkey EX, which scoops around and is darkened by the light, and there's a really nice pattern in the background. The Rayquaza EX is the final card, and it's super nice for us to get an awesome legendary Pokemon like Rayquaza as an EX card. It's looking extremely menacing as it flies through the air, and its body coils behind it, which is super cool. The final 3 cards from EX Dragon are the secret rare cards, being the Charmander evolution line, all done by Mitsuhiro Rita, starting with the Charmander, which looks over as its tail waves around it. The trees and the sun can be seen in the back. The Charmeleon, which is mid-action as it jumps forwards, slashing its claw. Finally, the Charizard, which showcases the Pokemon diving down with its mouth widely extended and breathing out some intense fire. And let me just say that this Charizard is awesome. I think it's easily my favorite Charizard card that I've covered on this channel so far, I'm pretty sure. And it is just amazing. I'd take this one over the base set Charizard in a heartbeat, because this one has that amazing dark shading and the bright light coming out of its mouth just looks awesome. And when it comes to my favorite cards in a set, I'd have to say that the Ampharos, Dragonite, Kingdra, and Rayquaza EX cards are all awesome. And then the Flygon, Shedinja, and Salamence holo cards. The Dragonair, Skarmory, Graveler, Whiscash, Corphish 54,
Gyarados, Slugma, Nincada,
and the Torchic. The cards in this set, once again, have all phenomenal artwork done by awesome artists, and I hope you're excited to join me for my next set, being EX Team Magma vs Team Aqua. That's a mouthful. Anyways, have a nice day.